You're listening to The Real Deal Conversations, a podcast designed to encourage, inspire, and equip you by sharing real stories and meaningful conversations that bring real life to the surface. I'm your host, Megan Deal. Let's dive in. I am with John Wilson today, founder and CEO of Light The Way Ministries, which some of you locals may know that as the festival in Rogersville. Mm-hmm. Now coming up, though, for the first time at Thunder Ridge Arena. So big, so big. John, thank you for coming on.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited.
Yeah. And I was, I talked to John on the phone and I said, he was telling me about his testimony, his story, and how Light the Way even started. And I thought, man, that is so good. That is so cool. That's powerful, his testimony. And I said, people need to hear that. And the thing is, he has a book, Honky Tonk Nights to Christian Lights, The Unforgettable Journey of a Music Promoter's Transformation, which you can purchase. But I also want to give you a glimpse into it here. So we're going to kind of hear the backstory, and then we'll get into the big news about Thunder Ridge and how it's just grown.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
So, John, you were a music promoter in Nashville, correct?
Well, I worked out of Nashville. I still lived here locally. I grew up in a small town just north of Springfield called Stockton, Missouri, which is about an hour or so north of here, mostly known for the lake. Okay. And so I worked there. I was in Nashville a lot. Like, it did feel like home there almost every weekend or whatnot, but just for the networking elements and getting to know some of the industry reps and things like that. But my home, my office was all based out of Stockton, just independent by myself. And
give us a glimpse. Give us, what did it look like for you before finding Christ in the music promoting business, your lifestyle, how you lived your day to day? What did that look like?
If I can just speak boldly,
please.
It was a living hell.
Yeah.
It really was, because my whole life I'd always wanted to thrive, to be accepted or feel that I was being accepted. And, growing up as a kid, you'll read this in my book, growing up as a kid, I was really stuck in a basement from the age 7 to about 17. Wasn't really allowed to go out, do any extra fun activities, sports or anything with school. It was just literally get on the bus, go to school, get back on the bus, come home. That was it, for most of my childhood. So I really felt isolated and not feel accepted. And again, when I wrote this book, I didn't want it to be a bashing thing toward my parents because I've forgiven them. We have a great relationship, but there's a story in this, right? And what it was is I was finding myself in those times as a child growing up that I thought that was life. I thought that was normal. I thought it was to be normal, to be isolated, not around anything. And, when I remember many, many times all throughout the days, throughout the nights, being in that basement where my room was, where I had two things. I had the little window that you have in your foundation of your basement, and a radio. And those were the only two things that I had that took me outside of the area that I was in. It took me in a world that I can only imagine, right? And when I was feeling down or about or just feeling lonely, I would just look out the window, make sure that there's still people out there. Or, turn on the radio.
Wow.
I remember so many hours and nights just growing up listening to, what's her name? Delilah, which I think is still around.
We must be similar in age.
I told someone, I was like, I used to listen to Delilah when I was little. Is she still alive? And they're like, oh, yeah.
That's so fun.
So, I mean, that's really all I had. And it was a very strong, structured childhood and just a lot of mental abuse.
Sure.
And the age of 17, I had enough.
Yeah.
And I moved out and I just got emancipated, lived out on my own, still graduated from high school, living out on my own. So I was a junior in high school and had my own place.
Wow.
So what did that mean? Well, I was the guy that had all the parties.
Sure.
I was trying to feel accepted.
Uh-huh.
It was the first time kind of outside of a bubble where I can be like, okay, these guys are cool, not knowing what I was getting ready to step into.
Yeah.
And that was really the catalyst that took me into the drugs and alcohol. Junior, senior in high school, I was the party house. I owned my own house. Everyone came over, even the local law enforcement, after they got off shift, they'd come over and party.
Wow.
It was the place to be.
Wow.
And I felt for the first time in my life,
Yeah.
people like me.
Yeah.
But what I didn't realize was people was using me. They were using me for the benefit of having a party house.
Sure.
My house would get broken into. I remember one time an air conditioner unit was yanked out of my window to go after a keg that was in the bathroom that I had chained to the pipes so no one could steal it.
Wow.
I had many incidents where cops would come and pull their guns and have guns drawn out on us because the parties were getting wild. And
Wow.
so it didn't feel right.
Yeah.
But in some token, it did feel right because I felt like these were my friends, and they really weren't my friends. They were just having a good time, you know, and taking advantage of me.
But what would
doing
you,
it.
in that, I kind of think about it too, and for like anybody else who experienced that, if you didn't have anything for your baseline growing up to even know what healthy friendship was.
Yeah, I had no idea.
To like learn.
I thought it was. I thought that's what it was.
Exactly.
Yeah, totally thought what it was. And so obviously I didn't feel right. Being in a small town, you tend to get into a lot of trouble.
Sure.
But the one thing during that season was there was always music going on. I always had a love for music. Even a junior through my senior year, I was involved in any element that the school had to offer for music. I was taking advantage of choir, band, show choir, dance lessons, anything you can think of. I was wanting to be involved in it. Yeah. Again, it was probably more along the lines of trying to feel accepted, right? But then as being in a small town, you just felt like there's nowhere else to go.
Yeah.
You felt capped. All there was to do was just to get in trouble. And so eventually, I moved out, moved away, and I lived with a family member way up north of Kansas City. And this family member was pretty heavily involved in drugs and alcohol too. But technically, I was kind of homeless because after so many years of living in that house from a junior to senior, I got kicked out. Obviously, the landlord didn't want any of that stuff happening. We damaged a lot of stuff. Now I'm homeless, living in cars, living on couches every night. So I had a family member that took me in way up north. But what I didn't know was this family member was even worse. It was this family member was involved in a biker gang.
Wow.
Was married, had kids, also was disobedient to his wife, all these things. And I just thought that was normal. I thought, okay, I'm going to be a part of this group, be a part of this biker gang, and I don't look like a biker at all. I was kind of the little everybody's buddy, But
I love how because it is one of the most common ways for people to get involved in things that are not healthy or beneficial to them is because they will choose the feeling of acceptance. Yeah. They will choose the feeling of being known. And I put that in quotes because are we really known by those people, Right. And that's what's so scary and hard and why it's so important for us to come alongside people because in a healthy way so that they don't fall into those traps because they're choosing acceptance over health.
Well, and that's where I was at. I was in a situation where these guys were accepting me for who I was and I thought, well, cool, finally again feeling accepted. And that's where I learned how to gamble. That's where I learned about all these other elements that were not healthy. Making money, stealing. I thought it was normal to beat the crap out of people just because I knew I had a band of brothers that would protect me no matter if I was wrong or right.
Sure.
That's what they did. The one thing I learned from that, though, was brotherhood, the importance of one another. Because if you look at that and put a Christian emphasis on it, it's important. That's where the scripture iron sharpened iron comes from. I didn't know any of that, But the one thing out of all this was again, music was still involved. I wanted to be a partier. I wanted to be the center of attention, all these things, which funny, oddly enough, I don't like being now.
Yeah.
I'm like, put me behind stage.
Yeah.
I don't want to be on stage. I like putting it all together. But then it wasn't like that. I was always center of attention. I always wanted to be a part of it. But music was still growing into me. So I realized real quick that living up there, living in that situation was not good for me. So where else did I go? I go back to my hometown again. There I became a bartender, met my wife, and I always say, she always says that I fell in love, or she fell in love and I fell asleep because it was just so crazy. It was just a wild marriage. I'm surprised we're still together after so many years, but the one thing we both had in common was we were both bartenders, just at separate bars. We both loved to drink, and we both loved our drugs. And we hated church. We always told ourselves we would never step foot in church. We always felt that Christians were very judgmental people. We thought church was judgmental, and really we didn't want nothing to do with it. So we're going on amongst our life. And then that's about the same time that I thought, my wife and I went to a Tim McGraw concert. Back whenever Tim McGraw came to Springfield, it was a big, I think it was called Show Me Music Festival out at Springfield Underground. And it was a big old country music festival. And it was our first concert ever. Like, I've always been around music in the sense of listening to it and maybe in school or something like that. But it was the first outdoor Christian or outdoor country music festival that we went to. And I remember we were right up on the side of the stage, my wife and I, and as a matter of fact, we got in through a local radio station contest, or not contest, but accepting volunteers to hand out flyers. Yeah. And maybe this is going to be a confession, so if anyone from that station's listening, please forgive me, but we got the flyers to hand out to get in for free because we didn't have money, We handed out like 2 or 3 flyers and threw the rest in the trash and raced up to the pit so we could be in front stage, But it was our first concert. And what was funny about it is, Tim McGraw, it was a great show, but I didn't care about any of that. What I was so memorized by everything that was going on behind the scenes, because I was able to see everything, and I was watching all that. And my wife was getting into the show, and I'm watching this stuff. And I looked over, or we got in the truck afterwards, and she goes, "What'd you think?" And I said, "I want to do that. I want to do concerts." And that's what kind of got me into the music industry. And I just kind of, didn't know anything, didn't know how it all started. And I'm like, maybe I'll be a artist manager or something, I don't know. So I just go home and I just Google things and just figure out all of it. And I just reading about how the industry works, just what I can find from Google. Sure. And I just said, well, I'm just going to pretend like I'm an artist manager, and I'm going to see if I can find me a local band and see if they need a manager, and sure enough, I found one. Yeah. And I'm like, I'm this manager, and I could book you places, not knowing what I'm getting into. Right. And what happened was I started booking this artist in local nightclubs and bars. So we were getting in this network of nightclubs and bars, and I was booking them, and then I was building a relationship with the bar owners. So much so they're like, hey, do you have access to people in Nashville? Because I would come out sounding like I'm bigger than what I really was. Yeah. Because that's how I had to sell myself, right? Yeah. And I'm like, well, I'll get you whoever you want, thinking, well, if they have the money, surely money can buy it, right? And sure enough, I ended up launching a company at that time, which was called Highway Promotions, and where I was an entertainment buyer for 4 or 5 nightclubs from Lincoln, Nebraska, all the way down to Joplin, Missouri, to Texas, Oklahoma, Kansas. Wow. And I was using other people's money to bring in these artists, these bigger artists, which was building my reputation in Nashville. Yeah. So for 10 years, I've been in the industry altogether for 20 years, but for 10 years, I was using other people's money, building my reputation, bringing in these big shows. I mean, I've worked with artists like Cody Johnson. I've worked with Luke Bryan, Luke Combs, Scotty McCreery, Easton Corbin. I've worked with all of them. Wow. And so, again, I was in that umbrella of, like, the industry's accepting me. Yeah. I'm going to go after it, Little did I know, I was finding myself, my wife and I, finding ourselves partying with these artists backstage. Because then not only am I trying to get accepted in Nashville by the agents or the managers, but I'm trying to feel accepted by the artists now too. They partied, I partied with them. We would drink or smoke every profit we had away. So living in this small town of Stockton, everybody knows what you do for a living, right? And so one guy that I know, who's actually the forward of this book, he was a Christian. We were in the same school. I graduated with his older brother. He was 2 grades under me. And I knew he was kind of this pastor guy and this Christian guy. But what was so cool about him was every time we would run into each other in a small town, he would just generally ask, how are you doing?
Yeah.
What's up? Like, how's the music biz? He would just talk normal to me. And knowing that I was a horrible person. Yeah. Drugs, alcohol, been in and out of jail, all the stuff. And he didn't care. He's just like, what's going on, man? Tell me about the music business. Not one time did I ever feel that he was trying to push the Bible down my throat. And then one day he just asked me over coffee, he goes, have you ever thought about doing a concert here in Stockton? And I'm like, no. Yeah. I was like, I've lived here my whole life. There's nowhere to do it, and I don't think this town could support it. Now, in this town, I would love to do something in Springfield, like Midnight Rodeo or, whatever the nightclubs were there that were bigger. I'm like, I would love to do that. And I said, not here in Stockton. He goes, well, why not? I said, well, there's not a place to do it. And he goes, well, what if there was a place? I'm like, there's not. He goes, well, just follow me. I'm like, all right. I said, if there's a place, I said, I don't know. I guess maybe I'd be interested. He goes, well, tell me, how do you do it right now? Like, how does it all come together? I said, well, in short, I find a venue, find an artist, put tickets on sale, and hopefully make money. Then he looks at me and says, have you thought about doing a Christian concert? Well, I'll keep it PG on my response of what I said to him today, but in short, I said no. And he's like, well, why not? And I said, well, I'm not interested. I said, there's no money in it, which to date, there's still no money in it. But I was like, I not my thing. And I said, well, praise God, or I didn't say praise God then. I'm like, well, thank God that there's no venue here then, or still couldn't even do it if there was. He goes, well, maybe think about it. And I told him, I said, Bo, look, I'm not interested. I was like, especially if I go into a church, it's probably going to catch fire. And he goes, well, probably, but he goes, what if, and then I told him, I said, I don't know any Christian artists. I'm not in that industry. I'm a country music promoter. And he goes, well, what if I know a few artists? I said, you're really making this hard for me. And he says, well, I'm not trying to, but what if I have a venue? And what if I know some Christian artists? And what if I help pay for a Christian show? Would you do it then? And I looked at him and I said, Bo, if I do it, it's going to be 100% of a joke, and I'm going to put very little effort in it. He looked dead in my soul and says, you're on. Let's do it.
Wow.
I have no idea what I agreed to. I instantly, at that time, I remember getting the shakes and sweating, and it wasn't from the coffee I was drinking. I don't know what I just agreed to. And I'm like, Bo, I don't know anyone. I don't know any venues. And he goes, well, I have a venue, and we're going to use my church. And I'm like, oh, no, this is not. I said, this is the old bait and hook. This is what you're trying to do. And he goes, nope, no bait and hook. He goes, I want you to think of my church as a venue. He says, if you need to tear down a wall to make room for something, let's tear down a wall. Like, he was dead serious. And I'm like, Bo, I'm not going to do, I'm going to put very little effort in it. So essentially, this show happened as a joke, and it was a heavy metal rock band called Seventh Day Slumber, which I don't even know who they were at that time. I was country music, and they were singing stuff that I couldn't even understand or hear the words, right? And so here we are, July 12th, I think it was, 10th or 12th, 2016. This concert happens at this concert, or at this church. I think the 203 or 215 people in attendance, one of the smallest shows I've ever done. And it was inside this church. And obviously, all day, all I can think about was something is about to happen, and I don't know what. I was
like, you didn't know.
I had no clue.
And that something that was about to happen, it wasn't like a good, woo, something's about to happen.
Oh no,
like
it was.
But you could feel it.
It was more of a sense like something bad was going to happen.
Oh, okay.
But I couldn't quite put my finger on
Yeah.
it, and so this show happens. It's going on, and my wife and I just kind of would keep our distance. So we were actually in the back parking lot doing what we normally do at our shows, drinking, smoking, whatever, while the show's going on inside this church. So you can actually hear the from inside, and then all of a sudden it stops. The music stops, and my back's toward the building, and I'm like, I'm not about to go in there. I don't want to go in there.
Yeah.
And thinking that something's going on. Like this band, if anyone's familiar with this band or been to one of their shows, they have pyrotechnics. So they're throwing up flames, and the ceiling on this church is very low. So I'm thinking...
it's on fire.
It's literally caught on fire.
Yeah.
And so I'm just looking at my wife. I'm like, I'm not going. And then I hear a voice. I heard someone yell at me and said, "Hey, John, come inside." And I looked at my wife and I said, who just told me to come inside? And she looked over my shoulder and was like, no one. And I said, no, someone just told me to come inside. So I put down what I was doing and I ran inside. And the reason why I didn't hear any music going on was because the lead singer of that band was actually talking like what we're doing here.
Sure.
I didn't know what was going on. And he was talking about drugs and alcohol to this crowd. And at first, I'm literally thinking this guy is airing out my dirty laundry to my hometown people.
Wow.
And I thought every relationship, every friend I had, everything that I've worked so hard for in that short amount of time to feeling accepted had just got ruined. Because he's airing out everything about me. And this guy doesn't even know who I am. So I'm literally thinking this guy's talking about me. So
and you would have thought that too if you just heard John come inside.
Yeah.
You
so
put two and two together.
Literally thinking like this guy. There's no music going. I'm upset about this, and then this guy's telling that. I was getting hot.
Yeah.
And then he gets to a point about suicide, and I'm like, wait, what? Like, I never tried to commit suicide. I thought about it, but I never did it. And then I realized, oh, wait, he's not talking about me. He's talking about himself.
Wow.
So now I'm like a little listening, but still confused. Like, what is going on here? Like, normally a concert, there's music going. There's a lot of energy. And this just feels like a Debbie Downer moment right now.
Yeah.
And he said that after he tried to commit suicide, he met a guy in the back of an ambulance that saved his life.
Wow.
And I'm like... well, who in the world is that? Like, is it a firefighter? Is it a police? Who is it? And then I heard him say, does anyone here want to meet this man? And I'm thinking, well, I kind of do now. I'm like, I'm invested now. I'm in the back of this church wall, leaning up against it. And I'm like, well, what is it? What kind of show does this happen? I've never experienced this before.
Yeah.
And he says, well, that man here that I'm talking about, that I want to introduce you to, his name is Jesus Christ. And I'm like, hold the phone. Did this just become church? So I'm just like, I am livid. I'm upset. But now I know enough information where I'm like, I'm confused and I want to know more. And I remember him saying, if like you want to meet this man, Jesus Christ, that I want to introduce you to, I want to see a show of hands. And I remember seeing about 23 hands that raised that had basically, what was going on was it was an altar call. I didn't know that then, right? It was like a call to action of some sort. And I didn't really understand what it was, but I saw those 23 people raise their hand. And out of the 23, I would say 90% of those were kids, younger than me, that I had no idea was fighting the exact same thing I had been fighting. Wow. And I'm thinking, I'm lost. Like, I am so confused. I'm hurt. I kind of honestly wanted to raise my hand but I had my promoter hat on, and I'm like, no, I'm not about to raise my hand.
Sure.
Well, as I'm processing and really just a hot mess, like I started crying and couldn't understand why, because I was so confused between whether I should raise my hand or whether I should tell them to stop and start playing music, you know? And as I'm processing all this, here comes Pastor Bo from the front aisle, because he was up there rocking with them all.
Yeah.
He comes back to where I was at, puts his arm around my neck, points to the crowd and says, look what you did.
Wow.
I'm like, I have no idea what I did. And he said, because of your obedience, these people are going to live a whole new life now.
Wow.
And I said, what in the world does that mean? He goes, you want me to explain it to you? And I said, yes, please. And as he explained it to me, that's when I fully surrendered to Christ. And everything I had on me, drugs, alcohol, everything, it just disappeared.
Wow.
Like it literally felt like I just got out of a shower from a hard day's work.
Wow.
And that clean feeling, it just left me.
Wow.
And when I share that story, most people ask, what happened to your wife?
Yeah.
Because she was still in the parking lot. And it was unfortunate that she didn't come inside. She didn't follow suit.
Yeah.
She was still, she was like, you do you. And so for a year and a half, I'm a new believer, and my focus was I had a dream that night to start this ministry where I wanted to take church outside the walls, reach people who are just like me, not knowing a bit of thing about a Bible, not knowing a bit of thing about Jesus. All I knew was what happened and that feeling I had. Like it was something that I felt like I was finally the thing I had always been chasing after, the acceptance of whatever. It was like it was overflowing in me, and I'm like, I don't know how else to get this to other people. Yeah. But I'm going to use the gift that I have, and I'm going to put a concert together, a festival, if you will, so I can reach people who would not go to church.
And did your wife think you were crazy?
Yes. She was, I love my wife so much because she thought I was nuts and crazy, but she supported it. Yeah. Even as an unbeliever, she goes, look, you do stupid and wild things. Like there was a season where I was a volunteer firefighter. I was on an EMS, just trying to feel accepted. And she's so used of my spontaneous, she goes, well, here's another thing he's going to do. Yeah. And when I quit my job to become a promoter, it was just another thing. And she was like, hey, you do you. Yeah. And so she was supportive in that way. But she did tell me, I remember this, she says, there is one thing that we will not do in this new little thing that you're doing. And I was like, well, what's that? She goes, we're not going to give money to the church. I'm like, oh, no, I'm good. We don't have that anyways to give, But for a year and a half, she was a non-believer and I was a believer all in one household. So she was getting high on weed and drugs and I was getting high on Jesus.
And how would you encourage people who are in that season where they have become a believer and their spouse is not come alongside them yet? And because I think there's so many things that people can do. They can keep badgering their spouse. Why aren't you coming along? Why aren't you coming along? Or they can give them the space, or it can ruin marriages because how would you encourage somebody who is in that season in their marriage?
Yeah. That's a very good question, because what we realized is from where I was coming from, I always felt like the Christians were judgmental people and they were pushy people. And when I became saved and a follower of Christ, I knew that wasn't what got me there. It literally just took me getting rid of my pride. And I really didn't have to do much to like any kind of verbalness to my wife saying, you're going to go to church with me. You're going to do this. You're going to do that. I didn't do any of that because I knew I didn't want that. Right. So maybe there's a family right now that's in that situation. What I think helped me to get through that moment was my new actions, the way I reacted to things, the way my demeanor was, the way my words were, the way I showed a whole nother bit of love. She would walk in the front room and I'd be sitting there reading my Bible or praying or something. I didn't really have to do anything. The Lord was already doing it through me I didn't have to use any words.
That's so good.
You know what I'm saying? Yes. So as bad as I wanted to pushed the Bible down our throat.
Yeah.
As bad as I wanted to say, you have no idea how this feeling is. You need to feel it. You need to come listen to this message at church. You need to do. As how bad I wanted to do it, it wasn't the direction that we needed to go. It was the love that Pastor Bo and his wife Megan showed us as a new believer and a non-believer that we don't care, we love you anyways.
Yes.
And it was that love of what never left that I think got to her. We did our first festival, 2017. It was the first festival after I got this vision, after I got saved, about a year after. Over 10,000 people showed up at this festival, and she still wasn't saved. And she's coming to it. So she's involving herself. Like, she always was a supporter.
Yeah.
Still to this day, she'll support all my wild and crazy dreams. Yeah. And she was there supporting it. And I remember we had the band We Are Messengers, Darren Mulligan, the Irish guy, you know. He was our headliner. And I remember I was actually talking to Darren the other day about this. And I said, Darren, I don't know if you know this story, but you headlined for our first festival. And he goes, yeah, I remember it. Yeah. And I said, you were on stage and you made everyone lock fingers and hands and hold them all up in the air. Yeah. And then you were in your accent, you're saying, I love you. And like, you were like really stressing, like, you don't understand how much I love you. And he was doing it in the accent. Yeah. And me and my wife were just kind of watching everything. Yeah. And she looks over at me as a non-Christian. Mm-hmm. She goes, who's the drunk guy on the stage right now? I say, well, honey, he's not drunk. He's Irish.
Oh, that's funny.
But she was engaged. She's like, this is different. Yeah. And it took about 6 months after that festival, I invited her to go to Branson with me. She'd always wanted to go to Branson as a family. And I said, hey, the church is doing this family retreat. And I know it's a churchy thing, but they're going to pay for it for us if the whole family comes. I was like, would you want to go? It's kind of going to do whitewater and stuff like that. And that was all her attention, was just the activities. Yeah. The Christian side of it, she didn't care about. But she's like, hey, free trip to Branson? I'm in. And the one night that we were there, they had church service, and it was very unique and different, but good. They did an altar call, and she saw a little 7-year-old boy walk up to the altar and give his life to Christ. And she looked over at me and it's like, if that little boy is brave enough to do this, I can too. And then that's when she surrendered to Christ. And so it was just a powerful moment, and it was a beautiful moment for our marriage. But that wasn't it for our marriage. It wasn't. It as a matter of fact, it's like everything amplified, and it felt like the marriage was getting worse. It was falling apart. You would think the other way around, right? Well, no, that's when the enemy went after us. And I remember we were coming up in year 2 of our festival, 2018, and I was living with the secret, even being saved. I was living with the secret. And I was unfaithful in my marriage to my wife, and it was several years ago. Probably at the very beginning of our marriage, as a secular promoter at these nightclubs and stuff, and I was unfaithful. And I was struggling. The ministry was struggling, trying to figure out how to get this second festival on the ground. And it's like I heard that voice again that said, it's time to tell her. And this was about 6 months after she got saved. And I'm thinking, this is it. Like, she's going to divorce me. I'm going to lose our kids. And most importantly, I'm thinking she's going to go back to drugs and alcohol because she's still a baby. Yeah. And all I can think about was I remember saying this prayer, Lord, I'm ready to accept my consequences. But please don't take her salvation. Now, I know that's not what God does.
No, but
that's what I was feeling, because I'm still a new Christian myself. And I'm like, I don't want her to go back to that.
No, I think that's very fair. You know, I do. It's protect her.
Absolutely.
Protect the way.
That's
I think
all I prayed about. I didn't care about anything that I did. I knew that I messed up, and I got to pay for my consequences, and I was prepared for that. I just wasn't prepared to see her go back, because she was still new. And I came home and I said, we need to talk, and I just told her. And I remember she left. I mean, we argued a little bit, and then she left, and she was gone for like 4 or 5 hours. And I'm thinking, I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm thinking the worst. I'm thinking she's at the bar. I'm thinking she's at her drug dealer's house. I don't know. I'm just thinking all the worst. And all I can remember was just sitting on the front room floor, just asking God just to protect her, just help her. Don't let her fall back. I'm ready for the consequence. I'm ready for her to come back home and tell me that, get out. I'm ready for it. I said, I accept it. I want that more than I do her leaving and going back to her old ways. 5 hours straight, just no food, nothing, just in this state of mind.
Yeah.
Next thing you know, she comes home. She opens up the front door and says, come outside. I want to talk to you. So I go out on the front porch, and she was a mess. You can tell she'd been crying this whole time and stuff. And I thought I would smell alcohol from her or the smell of weed or whatever. And I didn't. And I said, well, are you okay? She goes, no, but I will be. I'm like, okay. She goes, I drove by the bar. I pulled in the parking lot. My door wouldn't open to get out.
Wow.
I drove by the drug dealer's house. He wasn't home. All just doing all these routes.
Wow.
And everything I went to, I stopped, and nothing, either the doors weren't open or somebody wasn't there.
Wow.
And I just cried and screamed and yelled and kept doing this route. And then she finally heard something, and I'm like, okay. And she just said she felt this peace. And I'm like, okay. And she just looked straight at me and says, I'm not going to let the devil take our marriage. And she goes, I forgive you.
That's so good.
And I mean, it was just, it was like we got remarried.
Yeah.
It was a whole new beginning for us. It was something of something that was done many years ago that I thought I was going to take to my grave.
Yeah.
It was, and then how she forgave me. Not only was that, I'm sure was hard for her. I'm sure it was. But she forgave me.
Yeah.
Only being 6 months. And what I learned was the power of forgiveness in myself.
Yeah.
Because I couldn't forgive myself either.
Yeah.
And it was just, it brought our marriage stronger together.
Yeah.
And the moment that happened.
And how much more free were you to be the husband that you needed to be, knowing that that was no longer?
You know, I can't even explain other than the fact of going back to when I first gave my life to Christ, that feeling of cleanness. It was that same feeling again, almost like their chains were just broken, you know, and it was a sense of freedom that overwhelmingly was just like, what else can I do to get more freedom? You know, like I'm thinking, what do I need to do now? Like I'm ready for the next task. You know what I mean? Because it was just, I'm like, there has got to be a God.
Yeah.
Because for her to forgive me, knowing our background and who we are, that was a lot.
And now the thing is, I know that you're living like this because I saw it on socials, and I'm about to bring it up. Okay. But I know, and now it's like you're living exactly that, unchained and ready to just share and share and share. Because I saw on socials it was a construction company or something that you talked to, and 2 people accepted Christ?
Yeah, we had 23 decisions made, and out of those, 2 people were brand new believers.
Wow.
The rest were either rededicated or had some forgiveness that they had to let go.
And it wasn't even a Christian event.
It wasn't a church. No, it was a secular business that does a potluck lunch for all 300 of their employees. And they asked me if I'd come and speak. Didn't know what I was really walking into. And I said, well, yeah, I'll come and speak. Do you want me to share my story? They heard about my book.
Yeah.
And they're like, we read it and it was powerful. Can you come and just share that? And I'm like, sure. And they've never had an altar call before.
Yeah, that's so cool.
So
I know,
like you started something new.
I know when I saw it, I was like, man, to be in a fly on the wall in that room and just a group of men. I mean, that's so cool. It was men and women, both. Oh, men and women. Oh man, that's just so cool. And you're doing it. You're carrying you're carrying it on with Light the Way, Ministries.
We are. And here's the thing is, we're not religious people. I'll love you, but I'll also tell you what's up. My wife and I are so bold, and we don't have no reason to hide. We knew when that was the main reason that turned us away from church was just, it felt like people were fake. It felt like people were not genuine. It was just a show. I'm going to look my best on Sunday or Wednesday, but I'm going to be a different person all the other days. Well, for my wife and I, you're going to get real. If you meet us at McDonald's or at church, we're going to be the same people. We always say that, it's our job, and I got this from Pastor Bo, and if you need to beep it out, you can, but our job is just to love the hell out of everyone. And we do that in our own way. We're not fake. If we're struggling too, we have our faults every day. But the thing is we're not going to hide it. You know what I'm saying? I mean, we're normal people, but we love the Lord because of what he's done for us. And we know where we came from. Like, there was a lot of pride, there was a lot of hate, there was a lot of anger, there was a lot of unforgiveness, and the Lord has taken us through each one of these phases, and he's still taking us through others. Like, we're growing our faith as we speak. There's things that we're believing for, and we have to go back. Maybe I even have to go back and read my book and be like, how did I get through this? You know what I'm saying? Because those things don't change, and that's how you grow. But if you ever meet me and my wife in person somewhere around town or wherever, one of our events, we're going to be real. We're going to say what's up, and then we're going to love you and hug you afterwards.
And I'm so glad you are, because people are craving authenticity.
Oh, they are.
People are craving just to connect, and to connect is to be authentic. And they're craving that more and more, and searching more and more. And it is true. We need to stop acting like the Polo Club.
That's exactly right.
And we need to go out there and come alongside
because it's
them.
the Polo Club that's turning other people off who are not believers. You just got to be real. Just, you can love them, you can do what you need to do, but if you're fake, non-Christians will pick up on that quicker than anything.
Absolutely. And the thing is, so many people, it is so easy to mirror humanity with God our Father. And when we are doing that, when we're the Bible thumping, the judgment, they're going to not see you. They're going to see that as God our Father.
Well, and here's a way to know. If you feel like you have to force Christianity on something or a situation or on someone, that's not of God. God is a respecter of all people. He's polite. He will only come in when he feels invited. If you try to force it, and let me tell you, I wanted my wife to be saved right along with me the day I said yes, and that didn't happen. But I wasn't about to push it, because if I would have pushed it, it would have been worse. And who's to say that she would be a Christian today?
And I'm a believer that Holy Spirit works in those moments to where sometimes, yes, Holy Spirit is going to move, and like that night, Holy Spirit moved. But I also believe it's not, I think whenever we are forcing something and Holy Spirit isn't involved, it's anxiety and fear based. Because we're moving towards workspace. If I don't save these people, and we use the word I, first of all, it's not us that's going to save them in the first place. But there is that, if I don't save these people, then God's going to be mad at me, or I'm not going to be or what if God's mad at it? And it's all this anxiety and fear based, really, when you look at the root of it. And so, I appreciate so much. Your story is so good, and I know it's going to speak to so many people. I know it's so, and I'm so thankful for your vulnerability and being real, so that listeners who are resonating with that can see hope for tomorrow. And a different perspective.
Absolutely.
And I appreciate that. And so give us, Light the Way.
Yeah.
is going to be at Thunder Ridge, which is huge.
It is.
It is huge.
It is. We're so honored.
Yes.
Yeah, we are.
And so give us the details for Light the Way. One, where tickets can be ordered, and the lineup for this year.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, we're super excited. We just announced a major partnership with Bass Pro, who built Thunder Ridge Nature Arena just out there in Ridgedale, Missouri, which is just south of Branson, just a little bit. The festival is actually July 12th and 13th. It's a 2-day music festival, Christian music festival. And tickets are available right now on our website at lightthewayministry.com. And that's ministry with a Y, not IES. So lightthewayministry.com. And a lot of people think, oh, it's at Thunder Ridge. We're going to have to pay $20 or $50 for parking. Nope. Your ticket includes parking for both days.
That's great.
And your ticket covers you for both days. So there's not individual day passes. It covers you for the whole weekend.
Oh, great.
So it's a great deal, great value. Our lineup this year, so our headliner for Friday is Torrin Wells, and then we got Seth Schleter, KB, and a new artist, Clary Leslie, who's just blowing up the charts. And then Saturday, we have Need to Breathe, Megan Woods, who just come off of a #1 hit, Jordan Fleece, and Josiah Queen, all on both of these days. It's going to be a powerful, powerful event.
Yes.
Plus, we have several other surprises that we'll be announcing later on.
Oh, that's exciting. Okay. That is a good lineup.
Yeah.
That's a great lineup.
It's the best lineup we've ever had.
It's a good one. Yes. Okay. Well, John, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Yes.